Roads are more than just grey strips of asphalt dividing up the landscape. All over the world, roads are communication routes, linking important places. They can be seen as the prerequisite for human coexistence. It was only through the construction of roads that trade and travel became possible. For centuries now, roads have been a rich source of tales and history, but some of them harbour dangers, death, and a lot of human suffering. Worldwide, in the 20th century alone, some 35 million people lost their lives on roads, and a further 1.5 billion were injured. What this man says applies to far too many routes. Some of the world's most dangerous roads are located in the mountains, far away from civilization. Others, totally congested and seemingly devoid of any order, run through towns and villages or through major cities. Some roads were built under appalling conditions by slave labourers and prisoners of war. Others are even in the grip of evil spirits, which, so the locals believe, kill travellers. Roads overcome mountains and force travellers to look down into chasms, or they bridge them. Roads are the arteries of humankind, its cities and its economies. Anyone travelling on roads where death stalks is taking a great risk. But usually, there is no alternative. Nanga Parbat in the Himalayas is one of the world's highest mountains. Treacherous glaciers, rockfalls and avalanches have given it a notorious and deadly reputation as a killer mountain. Certainly where German climbers are concerned, the many failed expeditions and accidents since the 1930s have earned Nanga Parbat in Pakistan the sombre and frightening name of the Mountain of Fate. The small town of Raikot lies at the start of the last drivable road to the base camp below the summit. Running alongside a chasm, it threads its way between cliffs and landslides. Even getting to Raikot is an adventure fraught with danger. Known as KKH, the Karakoram Highway is a 2,000-kilometre long trunk road linking Pakistan with China. Murtaza Baig is an expert on mountain tours in Pakistan. He kept a film record of our journey and told us what is so fascinating about the highway.
Always the people describe about this road. I was really interested to must go and see how is fairy meadows and what is the road condition, because people are afraid and always talking about the road. So myself, when I came first time and I sit the jeep and then started the jeep, I was too scared and I said, oh my God, where I am going.
Following the mighty Indus River, the Karakoram Highway winds its way through the huge gorges of the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush and the Karakoram. Goods transportation was always a compelling reason for building the road. The colourful, artistically decorated trucks from Pakistan are unique. Front and roof superstructures are enlarged with wooden cladding to create more space for decoration. The term Karakoram Highway is actually a misnomer because the road is rarely well built, let alone multi-lane, and it runs straight through towns and villages. Truckers like Faisal are often on the road for weeks on end. The elaborate decorations on the inside and outside of their vehicles are intended to give them at least some feeling of home comfort because theirs is a highly dangerous job.
Driving on the Karakoram Highway is definitely hazardous. Numerous trucks and cars have met with accidents on it. Their drivers collided with other vehicles or they plunged into the rivers. As you can imagine, the highway is used by many commercial vehicles.
Often, fathers, sons, brothers and uncles take over from one another at the wheel because whole families work in the transport business. It's a tough job, but the €240, which Faisal earns every month, put him in the middle-class bracket. Hundreds, indeed thousands of trucks like this struggle along between steep cliffs and chasms every day. Without them, there would be no exchange of goods between the capital and the provinces.
Mine is a really big truck, but I always drive carefully. You have to know your truck really well, know how it reacts. Then it's all up to Allah and His mercy. He will help you.
But the Pakistani government no longer wanted to depend on Allah's grace and took a bold decision. So for several years now, there's been a new pass road over the mountain. The aim in building it was for vehicles to avoid the most dangerous bends and chasms on the notorious Karakoram Highway. At an altitude of 4,000 metres, the Babursa Pass was also designed to save truckers several hours, theoretically at least, because even though the road is actually new, driving over the pass is most definitely an adventurous undertaking.
If you use the pass, so then 4 hours definitely you will save from the KKH, because KKH is longer than Naran or via Babusar Pass.
But the first signs raised suspicions that the new pass road might be just as hazardous as the highway around the mountain. What's more, the pass is only open from June to October. Such are the forces of nature here that frost and tumbling rocks cause so much damage that the pass road has to be repaired at great effort and expense every year. Even in June and July, fog, rain and sometimes snow are a major risk. The traffic has suddenly come to a standstill. People are standing in the middle of the road. Meltwater from the glacier put too much pressure on the cliff. Consequently, only a few minutes ago, a huge landslip swept an entire mountainside into the depths. Now, there is total confusion here. No one has any idea of the true extent of the disaster. The masses of mud, rock and scree have buried everything beneath them. Heavy-duty machines will have to be brought up to deal with the problem. Drivers soon realise that they won't be going anywhere today, unless they turn back.
This route is highly dangerous, not only because of the weather conditions like mist and rain, but also because of the poor road surface. Over the last 3 years, thousands of people have been killed and injured. The tight bends are a real problem, and many accidents are often the result of the conditions. But sometimes they are also caused by brake failure.
Soon there's a rumour that the pass road will be open again during the night. A bulldozer has appeared from somewhere or other and begun to clear the rubble. Small groups have formed. Drivers are chatting about what they've seen and heard and discussing what can be done.
We have already seen 2 big landslidings, and then the people said that there is more 3 like this. So that's why the people are stuck for 3 days, 4 days. And then there is no heavy machines there, you know, so that's the big cause. That's why the people are stuck from both sides.
3 houses in the village of Thak. Telephone lines and electricity cables have been buried by the masses of mud and rock, and so have 5 young people in their car. It's a tragic situation. Somehow, residents and travellers try their best to clear the debris. After all, everyone wants to continue their journey. However, the full extent of the landslide only gradually comes to light. At the same time, on the Karakoram Highway a short way down from the peak, Faisal and other truckers have decided against taking the road over the pass. It might save time, they say, but the road is blocked too often and it's too steep anyway for trucks. So their only option is the dangerous KHH, with its tight bends and cliff faces. The piles of shattered glass indicate head-on collisions with no room for evasion action. Such crashes are common. The driver has a broken axle. He's been waiting in his truck for hours. It will be a while yet before his co-driver comes back with help, so he's been taking a nap. As 24-year-old Faisal knows, it's all part of everyday working life on the highway.
When you drive this highway for the first time, you're scared, but then you get used to it. Of course, I'd prefer it if the situation here were better, with more signs, for instance. If the roads were better, life for us drivers would be easier. we would have fewer problems on the route.
Faisal has been on the road for 5 days now, transporting spare parts and cables to the area along Pakistan's border with China. When the two countries agreed to launch the huge construction project, the 800-kilometre-long highway through the foothills of the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush and the Karakoram ranges was seen as the eighth wonder of the world. In summer 1996, the Frontier Works Organisation, a subunit of the Pakistani Armed Forces, was established. 15,000 workers under the direction of Pakistani and Chinese engineers blasted and dug the road through the mountains, initially with explosives and then with their bare hands as well. Even today, the more than 800 Pakistanis who lost their lives in building the highway are regarded as martyrs. The road still follows the Indus River, whose raging waters have cut a deep gorge through the rock. Raikot is a quiet town right on the highway. Goods are transported further north from here to Afghanistan, Tajikistan and China. The climbers hoping to conquer Nanga Parbat take an easterly approach. In Raikot, they get into one of the brightly coloured jeeps which were left here in the 1970s by the American military. In Raikot, extreme sports people, mountaineers and Pakistani tourists all rent a jeep with driver because they are the only vehicles able to cope with the road to the Fairy Meadows base camp. Raikot's jeep drivers are organised in a kind of professional association. They set prices and draw lots to see who takes which tour on the dangerous road. No driving school could teach what they know and can do. They are absolute specialists and bear responsibility for the lives of the 4 or 5 people in their jeep. Only a few minutes out from Raikot, passengers quickly get an initial idea of what they've let themselves in for. To the right, the jagged edges of a cliff face, to the left, a yawning chasm. Driving a touch too fast, taking a bend too wide, a rockfall, a sudden oncoming traffic situation. There are many dangerous situations here that can end fatally. In many places, parts of the road have crumbled, making the narrow track even narrower. Damaged sections are temporarily repaired with wooden beams and piles of stones. But instead of focusing intently on every rock, if possible, passengers should enjoy the spectacular view. The drivers are bold, fearless men who know every rock, every bend and every sheer drop. It's only 20 kilometres from Raikot to the end of the road, but the journey takes up to an hour and a half. Every few kilometres, the driver stops to make a brief check on his jeep. A mini-service, if you like. And it goes without saying that the horn needs to be sounded before every bend. The jeeps are only ever driven in first or second gear, so before setting off, each driver always attaches 2 or 3 bottles of water in front of the radiator grille. Because of the low speed, the virtual absence of headwind, the gradient and the heavy weight, without additional cooling, the engines would quickly overheat. Great demands are also made on the springs and suspension. If necessary, a few taps with a rock solves any problem. After a brief check on the wheels and tyres, the journey continues. At first, Faisal was only co-driver to his uncle and his father, but for some time now he's been driving on his own. His gaze is always fixed on the road. The situation here calls for total concentration. Trips like this, of course, 4 or 5 times a week, depending on the weather, are also an adventure. There's no driving school that can teach you to meet the demands of this job.
Some of the people I drive here get frightened right at the start. Very few remain calm. Most suddenly jump from one side to the other, shrieking and screeching.
Faisal is a polite person. On camera, he doesn't mention that some of his customers want to turn back even after the first bend, telling him straight away that the tour is not for them. A rockfall has damaged the bridge. Not even the jeeps can get through. So the passengers have to get out and walk to the other side to be picked up.
My biggest fear is that something could happen to my passengers, that they might be killed. It's not just my life I'm worried about, but also the lives of the people I'm driving.
These tourists from South Korea have returned from a trip stressed out. They tried to reach the Fairy Meadows base camp, but the physical effort proved too great. On the other side of the bridge, other jeeps are waiting to take the climbers and a few villagers to the last settlement that can be reached by vehicle. Dilber Khan, who owns a hotel in Jel, joins us on the last few kilometres to the end of the road. We learn how important it is for the people who live here.
Many people come here. Yeah, it's a good business for us and good for the people also. If the road is good road, then they come very easily to go up to the ferry meadow and they can see the ferry meadows. They go up to the base camp and the bell camp everywhere. So if the road is not so good, then so many people, they tell us that your road is not so good, that's why we are not coming to there.
At this spot, the road used to run beneath the cliff. During the last thaw, the track was buried by scree and swept away by the masses of water. But the villagers refused to give up in their battle against nature. Here, an old man has secured his colleagues solely with a thin hemp rope. The men have got hold of some dynamite and a few tools and are wresting a new road from the cliff a bit higher up. No one is paying them for the work. These people want to be linked to the outside world, so they meet the cost themselves. For the time being, anyone wanting to get to the base camp on Nanga Parbat has to negotiate this 50-metre section on foot. Hang on tight, the locals advise, and don't look down. For the foreseeable future, the road from Raikot to Fairy Meadows will remain what it is today, a highly hazardous route to Nanga Parbat, the killer mountain. Anyone wanting to scale this notorious peak has to continue from here on foot, or perhaps on the back of a mule. Madagascar is the world's second biggest island state. Although it's more than 1.5 times the size of Germany, Madagascar has a population of only 23 million. Some of the roads in its network of 32,000 kilometres are breathtakingly beautiful, but others are full of adventure and fairly dangerous. The notorious National Route 5, the RN5, is the worst of all. On this road, people and material soon reach their limits. Tantali Razanamaro is a professional chauffeur on Madagascar. He runs his own transport company. Tantali has 3 employees, but when his clients want to travel north on the RN5, he usually drives them himself. He knows that before starting out on his next trip, there are a few things he needs to think about, because there is a lot that can go wrong along the way.
Praying isn't enough. I have to prepare properly for the job. I must also be ready in my mind and in good shape physically. Praying isn't enough. That won't make the road any better.
It's 4 a.m. in Soani Irana Ivongo, a coastal town on the RN5. It's not yet dawn, but drivers and passengers are already preparing to take the ferry across the bay. The road continues on the other side, but there it is no longer paved. Official controls are virtually non-existent. People here run things themselves. Whether and when the ferry sails is decided afresh every day. The taxi bruses, or bush taxis, are private minibuses that travel to even the most remote villages. They don't offer any legroom or comfort, but as the owner of this bush taxi knows, there is no alternative.
I've been driving the RN5 for 2 years because I ask a higher fare and can make more money.
Tantali, our professional driver, is also taking this ferry. He's arranged to drive in a convoy with the bush taxi. It's something they all do here, because driving the RN5 on your own would be reckless. Thus, the drivers and their passengers quickly form a community of destiny, because the trip north is not without its risks. In an emergency, people have to help one another. The road runs along the Indian Ocean, water to the east, dense jungle to the west. A rather original kind of seatbelt, but this isn't being cocky. Travelling like this calls for courage and experience. Over the next few days, it will become clear that a trip on the RN5 is difficult and strenuous. At first, though, everything's idyllic. When Madagascar's president came to power in a coup in 2011, two things seemed particularly important to him: printing new money and building roads. The country's biggest banknote combines both goals in pictures and colours. But the RN5 is still a far cry from this ideal image. This is the start of that stretch of the RN5 which drivers say is the easier part. No one has more experience on this route than the bush taxi drivers. Some of them travel it every 3 or 4 days. With the sea on the right and the jungle on the left, it's not just a case of negotiating the occasional puddle on the RN5. Travelling on this route involves an almost rhythmic rocking through mud and sand that lasts for hours. Tantali knows that if he decides to drive through here, he has to keep his foot down, even if water is washing over the hood or getting inside the vehicle. Anyone who gets stuck here without an escort has a real problem, one that could last several days. The lads on the roof keep a lookout for sharp rocks in the murky water that could damage the tyres or the underbody. They tell Tantali when to hold back so that both vehicles don't get stuck in the same mud hole. The man with the interesting seatbelt instructs him to put his foot down. "You're on the right line," he says. "When you get through, pull up on the right." It takes a lot of pluck and skill to find the right path through the water. After downpours, pools like this can be a lot deeper than they seem. Tantali is a professional driver, but he doesn't know this stretch as well as the taxi lads, so he's glad that they're driving ahead of him. And so the two off-road vehicles plough their way along the RN5, heading further and further north towards Maranana. Some of the people on the load bed have got cramp, others are feeling sick, but there will be no stopping until the next ferry is reached. Constantly being immersed in water has made the filters damp. So every few hours they need to be removed and dried, but time is getting short. If they miss the ferry, they'll be stuck here. So everyone lends a hand as best they can, because often even some of the passengers prove to be good mechanics. As soon as the engine compartment is more or less free of water, the journey continues. The further north the vehicles get, the smaller the ferries become that transport them. Pedestrians, motorbikes and bicycles are rowed across. The ramps are for jeeps and trucks, even if the sheet metal sometimes suffers. The main ferries are financed by the state. But here, money still changes hands. It's better to put your hand in your pocket if you want to make absolutely sure of getting across before nightfall. Apart from the bush taxis and Tantali, 2 trucks are also travelling on the RN5. Hasim transports clothes from the north to the capital and often sits behind the wheel for 16 hours. If there's room to earn a little extra cash, he takes passengers on the load bed. October is high season and Hasim drives as often as he can. He bears almost everything with stoicism, although the wooden planking on the ferries always scares him. At some point, when you no longer think it possible, the water holes and sand tracks come to an end. But what follows is far more strenuous for Hasim and the other truckers. The vehicles on the road here aren't exactly fragile. They're all-wheel drive trucks, which used to belong to the military. Time and again, people carrying spades appear as if from nowhere to, let's say, do a little work on the RN5. According to the drivers, the holes they fill in during the day were dug during the night by the very same people. And the men expect a small donation for their efforts in repairing the road, so it's not surprising that the average speed on this stretch of the RN5 is a mere 9 kilometres an hour. Arno and his lads on the bush taxi are now some way ahead of the trucks. The mood is good, and the men on the roof treat themselves to the occasional swig of gin. But at some point they have to pull up between a few huts in the village and disassemble the entire rear axle. There's hardly anything they can't fix on their old Toyota, even when they're on the road. But the water and the sand on the RN5 are a constant source of friction, and the differential and the wheel bearings suffer accordingly. Arno still doesn't know exactly what the problem is, but the unmistakable grinding noise gives him a very good idea.
From now on, the rocks are going to be more and more of a problem. If the damage is serious, it'll have to be fixed here. The car has to be in good shape, otherwise we won't make it.
This time, a motorcyclist will have to go back and fetch spare parts. Arno and the bush taxi's crew are stuck. No one can say how long the motorcyclist will take because he's on his own and will have to ask along the road to see if he can get hold of any used spare parts. Now Tantali has to continue in his Pajero on his own. He's been instructed to pick up the member of a development aid organisation in a small village a good 40 kilometres from here, but it's doubtful whether he'll make it by the end of the day. The drive along the RN5 is now pure torture. In fact, travelling like this can't really be called driving. It's more a case of slipping and sliding, floundering and weaving. Out here, nearly everyone gets around on foot. Now Tantali himself has to stop. The acrid smell from the engine compartment is clearly coming from burnt plastic or rubber. Constantly driving over huge rocks is having an effect.
You have to keep putting your foot down and driving at high revs. As a result, the clutch overheats. We'll have to let the car cool down for half an hour or so.
But 20 minutes later, Tantali sets off again because he has to solve another, far more pressing problem than an overheated clutch. Where can he find diesel on the RN5? There are no filling stations and his jerry can is empty. Tantali knows of a dealer who sells diesel, but there is a risk involved.
It was further south. We were forced to travel at night and were attacked. When we saw the robbers, the people in the taxi panicked. The men wore short pants and plastic sandals and were heavily armed. But they weren't after money. That wouldn't have been any use to them in the jungle.
Around midday, the sun disappears and it starts to rain. For kilometre after kilometre, Tantali battles on through the mud. Finally, he reaches the village where he's supposed to pick up the man from the aid organisation. But there's no sign of him. It's not been a good day for Tantali. The repairs have cost him a lot of time and money. He decides to turn back and spend the night in a nearby village. He'll wait a day or two and hope that his customer has only been delayed. That happens. Above all, anyone who is out and about in northern Madagascar needs time. Lots and lots of time. With 163 million inhabitants, Bangladesh is one of the world's most densely populated countries. Travelling on the roads here is a real challenge, and the chaos and constriction of Dhaka, the capital, are only the beginning. Bangladesh's highways are among the most dangerous on earth. Anyone getting into a car here must reckon with a very special type of experience.
Here in Bangladesh,
The first time I drove my own car here in Bangladesh, I thought I was in a madhouse.
Adam Dala is a journalist, film producer and newscaster with Bengali television channel ITV. A keen motorist, he's only too aware of the dangers on his country's roads.
Nowhere is it more difficult and frustrating to drive a car than here in Bangladesh.
Good evening, you're watching Independent News. I'm Adam Dala. Before we go into the details for the evening, let me give you a couple of headlines.
Theoretically, you can drive here without sounding your horn, but that would be pointless. In Bangladesh, anyone who doesn't pump their horn is simply not part of the traffic scene. Everyone in Dhaka, with its 16 million inhabitants, wants to get to where they're heading for, and its roads are the city's arteries. But the highways in the north and south of the country in particular are full of dangers which pose a threat to life and limb. Adam Dala travels to the TV studio in Dhaka by car. Some days the trip takes him 20 minutes, but sometimes he needs 3 long hours for just 3 kilometres. That's why in the city he has a driver. It means he can use his precious time for working. Out on the highways, Adam prefers to take the wheel himself, but what exactly is a highway in Bangladesh?
Here, a highway is simply a road between two towns. It has nothing to do with a real highway.
The dangers presented by these so-called highways soon become obvious. Driving here is like constantly being part of an action film. This is typical of many places in the country. Just one lane in each direction, and often 2 lanes, quickly become 3 or 4, creating a very tight situation. People who drive for a living, like Jahid Shiak, spend between 14 and 16 hours a day at the wheel. Jahid works 6 days a week. With an income of just €72 a month, he belongs to Bangladesh's middle class. There's no speedometer needle. Jahid drives according to his instincts and sometimes the wishes of his passengers. He doesn't have any fixed schedule to keep to. The more customers he has on board, the more profitable it is for the owner of the bus. Full buses are regularly involved in serious accidents. Jahid explains why it's not always the driver who's at fault.
With many accidents involving buses, it's not always the driver who is to blame. Especially in the mornings when I start work, people pile in and start shouting at me. "Get a move on, man, we're late. If you don't put your foot down, we won't get to work on time." Passengers often complain that I'm not driving fast enough.
That sounds a bit like an excuse, because looking at the way they're driven, it's clear that in Bangladesh, buses and trucks dominate the highways. Nothing seems to scare the men at the wheel. A Nosimon is a vehicle for the little guy, a homemade contraption powered by a boat engine, because marine diesel is cheaper. Nosimons are not allowed on highways, neither are rickshaws, powered or not, but that's usually ignored. The main thing is to get to where you want to, no matter how.
Drivers here are one of Bangladesh's dangers. As you can see, the road itself isn't bad, but people just drive any way they want. Overtaking is an everyday occurrence, especially overtaking in the wrong places. When I'm on this side of the road, it can happen at any time that a vehicle from the other side, it might be a car or a truck, is suddenly coming forward in my lane, and the driver doesn't plan to stop. So I have to get out of his way. Very often, I have to veer onto the verge to let him through. Otherwise, of course, we'd collide head-on.
The emergency department of a hospital only 60 kilometres north of Dhaka. Victims of serious accidents are brought here every day. The Sylhet Highway is one of the most dangerous roads in the world.
This hospital is just beside our Dhaka-Sylhet Highway, just side of Dhaka-Sylhet Highway, and lots of accident patients, lots of road traffic accident occurs in this highway due to the ignorance of our local people also, and our inexperience of our drivers, and some of our negligence of our drivers.
Anyone who makes it to the district hospital after an accident can count themselves lucky.
I have faced a lot of road traffic accident patient and road traffic accident and the injured patient, because I am working here last 10 years, and I am also a cardiologist, and I am in charge of this hospital, resident medical officer, and we have faced a lot of road traffic accident, not only for daytime but also at night time also. And when there is an accident occurs, road traffic accident, he has multiple injuries. His head injury, his epistaxis, his fracture, his abdominal trauma, chest trauma with respiratory distress.
Whether an accident victim survives doesn't only depend on doctors' skills. Often it simply depends on getting to hospital at all. That's because ambulances do not enjoy right-of-way here. Indeed, their drivers complain that only a quarter of the people on the road have any idea what a siren or flashing blue light means.
When buses collide head-on, we often have 40, 50 or 60 injured people to transport. But there are only 10 ambulances in the entire district. So we always have to hire private buses and cars to get accident victims to hospital. Otherwise, we could never help everyone injured in a major crash.
A bus trip of several hundred kilometres on Bangladesh's highways costs about 60 cents. It's half price if you travel on the roof. This is actually forbidden, but it is still fairly popular. 26-year-old Jahid Shiak has been driving a bus in the chaos on the highways for 7 years. He knows that in a serious traffic accident he could be killed outright. But even if he survives a major crash, his life can still be in danger.
Even if I'm not responsible for an accident, people will still come and attack me. Often, they don't even understand exactly what has happened. But in their eyes, anyone driving such a big bus must be to blame. Bus drivers are so scared that they run away at once, because after an accident, the angry crowd can even set fire to a bus. If a rickshaw or a car collides with a bus, people on the street blame the driver of the bigger vehicle, and that's the bus driver.
Chaos and violence at the scene of an accident. A frightening scenario that can quickly become life-threatening. A totally overladen truck has overturned on the highway. The driver has run off, but passers-by have grabbed his co-driver. The policeman also has an opinion as to the cause of the accident. The mood is heated and confused. While passers-by are delighted to have found so much free rice, a few residents try to keep on top of things. They call for a police tow truck and do their best to control traffic at the scene. Soon, everyone is bustling on the Dhaka-Chittagong Highway once again. Trucks, buses, rickshaws and all kinds of homemade vehicles. Pedestrians with and without animals are also getting off again. The fact that drivers on the highways are often under great time pressure and spend far too long at the wheel is only part of the problem. The fact is that they rarely shy away from danger, drive far too fast and risk the lives of their passengers. Near accidents are so common that no one here gets excited. The following scene too can happen time and again on some of Bangladesh's highways. Work elephants from a nearby construction site also use the highway and sometimes change direction unexpectedly. Their owners are on their lunch break. With nothing to do, they set off along the road to earn a bit of extra cash. Car passengers aren't always amused to have an inquisitive trunk check out their vehicles. A small donation for the animal's feed is a request that sometimes falls on deaf ears. Anyone who doesn't pay then has to wait a while before they can set off. Elephants get especially annoyed when their owner gives them a kick behind the ears. That's something you've also got to be prepared for. On some of Bangladesh's highways, virtually anything can happen. The government has long been trying to master the situation on the roads. Concrete dividers in the middle of the road are designed to at least separate the lanes and reduce the number of head-on collisions. Here and there, bridges have also been built to enable people to cross the highway, but most prefer to use the traditional method.
Anyone who wants to know the exact meaning of the word chaos should come to Bangladesh and experience the traffic conditions.
And so the highways of Bangladesh continue to be among the most dangerous roads in the world. For Jahid, the bus driver, his passengers, the pedestrians, and also for Adam Dala, the director and newscaster.